One of the things that I hear from time to time, it's always an interesting conundrum, is people wondering if there's such thing as a Mormon Jesus. A lot of Christian churches say, well, your Jesus is different than our Jesus. We don't worship the same Jesus. I think the confusion on that is partly our fault. We have to own that. A prominent Baptist preacher once said that trying to understand what Mormons believe is a little bit like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. Just because there seems to be always a give and take about what exactly we believe and what we don't. And one of those areas is what we believe about Jesus and what we feel like Jesus did for us. Certainly there was an effort, I think, if we go back a few decades, to a number of the leaders of the church whose parents and grandparents had gone through bitter persecution in places like Illinois and Nauvoo and in Missouri, and even watching how the church was treated at the turn of the century when the church was disenfranchised over plural marriage. So there was a sense coming out of those church leaders to somehow separate what the church believed from others, and how that crystallized into a sense of that most Christian churches believe in salvation by grace. We're going to distinguish ourselves from that by talking about a salvation of obedience and works. Basically, that came down to you need to be baptized, but you need to work hard kind of to earn your salvation at the end of that, and making sure that you have kept all the commandments, then you get the highest kingdom. That doesn't sound anything near what a lot of Christians believe, is that, and certainly what Paul preached very, very clearly in the New Testament, and that was that salvation is by grace and by the blood of the Lamb, and not by any works of ours, lest any man boast, which is really true. And I think Mormon theology has clarified a little bit as we've gone over the last decade or so, especially in over emphasizing again the idea that we don't earn salvation. We can't do enough to save ourselves. That as Latter-day Saints, we don't believe in salvation by works. We believe, as does every other Christian denomination, that it comes as a gift of grace from Jesus. Now, we do align ourselves a little bit with some churches that may see the importance of baptism and certain sacraments that need to be done as kind of sometimes a receptacle of some of that grace. But at the end of the day, it's still a matter of saying we believe in the same Jesus that everybody else does. We worship the same Jesus that everybody else does. And that was that it all comes down to his ultimate suffering and death and resurrection on the cross. Perhaps one of the last things we might mention is that culturally, one of the decisions that was made early in the church as part of the culture is that we wouldn't incorporate the use of the cross in our architecture and in the way that we look at things, and that was probably unfortunate. There's nothing we worship a Christ who was whose death on the cross made our salvation possible. We could easily incorporate the cross should we have chosen to, and it probably would have cleared up some of the misconceptions that might have come along the way. So we would revere the cross as the instrument by which that death was accomplished, and then the tomb by which resurrection came. We love and worship the same Jesus. We're not different that way. Hope that makes a little bit of sense. Thanks for listening.